There exists a specific neurological gap in female consent architecture. One question closes this gap. She won't see it coming. What you're about to learn explains why some men navigate intimate escalation effortlessly, while others face constant rejection. And it has nothing to do with looks, money, or confidence. Listen, most men approach intimacy like it's a transaction. They negotiate, they ask permission, they lower their status and hope for mercy. And women, consciously or not, have learned to reject this energy because it's not attractive. But here's what most men don't understand. Rejection isn't about her saying no to you. It's about her saying no to an unsafe framework. The man who asks permission without establishing context is creating an unsafe frame. She's not rejecting him. She's rejecting the dynamic. This matters because you're not a bad man for wanting intimacy. You're not shallow or wrong for desiring physical connection. What matters is that you understand something fundamental about female psychology. Women are not aroused by hesitation. They are not drawn to men who ask in a way that requires them to take the responsibility of a yes or no. The deepest truth here, the one that changes everything, is that intimacy isn't given, it's created. And the creation of intimacy requires a specific linguistic architecture that most men have never been taught. What you're about to learn is not manipulation, it's clarity. There's a concept in neuroscience called frame collapse. When a woman's emotional and intellectual frames don't align, when her mind is saying one thing but her body is saying another, she experiences cognitive dissonance. The way most men ask for intimacy creates a false frame that forces her to make a conscious choice. And conscious choices about sex come with social guilt, shame, narratives, and fear. But when you shift the frame, when you remove the asking and replace it with assumption of mutual understanding, you're working with her neurology instead of against it. Research on sexual communication shows something interesting. Women respond better to men who establish context before escalation, not because they need convincing, but because context removes shame. Context removes the burden of choosing. When there's already an established narrative of desire, of course this is happening. There's no moment of decision. There's only continuation. This is called presupposition in behavioral psychology. It's the difference between asking, "Can I kiss you?" and creating a moment where kissing is the assumed natural progression. One puts the responsibility on her to decide. The other creates a reality where the decision has already been made at the subconscious level. The second approach isn't manipulation because it's honest. You're both attracted. You both want this. The only difference is that you're speaking to her like a system instead of her prefrontal cortex. Let me paint a specific scene. You're in a dimly lit apartment. Maybe it's yours, maybe it's hers. There's been hours of conversation. Chemistry is clear, but there's this unspoken thing hanging in the air. The moment hasn't been addressed, but everyone knows it exists. It's like the silence before a storm, thick, charged, waiting. This is where most men fail. They look uncomfortable. They shift in their seat. They break the spell by asking something like, "Do you want to? Or should we?" The moment a man asks, he's handed over his power. He's told her through his language that he's uncertain, and uncertainty is the death of desire. But what if he didn't ask? What if you understood the architecture underneath the moment so completely that you moved with precision instead of hesitation? This is what we're exploring today, not as pickup artists or manipulators, but as men who understand female psychology deeply enough to navigate intimacy with genuine respect and authentic presence. The dark truth is this: women want to want you. The problem is they've been conditioned to feel shame about that wanting. Your job isn't to convince her. Your job is to remove the shame from the wanting. Before we move into escalation, you need to know something crucial. Not every moment is the right moment. Not every woman is in the right headspace. The first question isn't something you ask directly. It's something you observe and know intuitively. Watch her pupils. This is not metaphorical. When a woman is sexually aroused, her pupils dilate. This is involuntary, neurological. She can't fake it, and she can't hide it. Most men never look at a woman's eyes in moments of intimacy. They're looking elsewhere. But if you're watching her face, you're watching her nervous system tell you the truth about her state. The question isn't, "Are you ready?" The observation is she shows all the signs of readiness. There are other signs. Her breathing changes deeper, slower, more deliberate. She leans in. She touches you more frequently or holds the touch longer. She breaks eye contact and then comes back to it. These are not signs you manufacture. These are signs you recognize. This matters because we live in a culture obsessed with explicit consent. And while consent is important, most men have been taught that explicit verbal consent is the only consent that matters. This is false. Women communicate consent through their entire nervous system. They're constantly broadcasting their state of readiness or non-race. The first diagnostic question, again, not something you say aloud, but something you assess, is her nervous system aligned with yours? If the answer is no, if she's still in social mode, still in conversation mode, still maintaining intellectual distance, then nothing else matters. You don't proceed. You create more space. You let more time pass, because a woman who isn't ready is not someone you're going to seduce. She's someone you're going to hurt. But if the answer is yes, if you're reading genuine physiological signs of arousal and openness, then the real framework begins. The second element of this architecture is something called the refrain question. This is where men typically go wrong. They say something like, "Would you want to?" Or "Are you comfortable?" If, or worst of all, "Do you want to have sex?" Each of these questions does the same thing. It puts her in a position of active choice, and women hate this, not because they don't want sex, but because active choice requires her to claim ownership of the desire. It requires her to say the words, and saying the words feels vulnerable in a way that's socially precarious. The refrain question works differently. It assumes a mutual understanding that's already been established. It says something like, "I've been thinking about this all night," not "Have you been thinking about this?" Not "Can I tell you something?" Instead, an assumption that the thinking, the feeling, the desire, it's mutual, it already exists, you're just naming it. This is where the psychology gets interesting. When you presuppose shared desire, you're not asking her to create that desire from nothing. You're asking her to acknowledge something that's already present. There's a neurological difference. One requires her to generate, the other requires her to receive. The reframe statement is almost always personal. It's your experience, not her permission. It might be the way you looked at me when you said that. It's been on my mind. Or, "I don't think I've ever felt this way around someone so quickly. It's disorienting in the best way." Or even simpler, more direct, "I want you. I have for hours now." Notice what's absent. There's no question mark. There's no permission seeking. There's only honesty about your state. And here's the neurological magic. When you state your own desire clearly and without apology, she feels safe in her own desire. Your certainty becomes her permission. This is the part that separates men who understand female psychology from men who are just fumbling around in the dark. The permission paradox works like this. Women don't want to be asked for permission, but they desperately need permission at a deeper level. They need to feel like what's happening is not their fault. This is the shadow side of female socialization. Women are taught from girlhood that their sexuality is dangerous, that wanting sex makes them bad, that initiating sex makes them so. Even when a woman genuinely wants to be intimate, there's a part of her that needs to feel like she didn't choose this, like it happened to her, like she was swept up. This is not about actual lack of consent. This is about psychological consent, the narrative that allows her to want without shame. The permission paradox is solved through physical progression, not through words. Here's what this means. Instead of asking, "Can I kiss you?" you create a moment where kissing is the inevitable next step. You move closer, you make eye contact, you touch her face or her neck. You create a physical reality where kissing is already happening, and your question, if you ask one at all, becomes almost rhetorical. The question might be, "Can you feel this?" Not, "Can I kiss you?" See the difference? The first presupposes that something is already occurring. The second asks permission for something that hasn't happened yet. When you touch her, let's say your hand on her face, and then ask, "Can you feel this?" You're not asking permission to touch. The touch is already there. You're asking if she's experiencing it. This is a completely different neurological frame. It's asking her to be present rather than asking her to choose. This is the permission paradox. You give her the experience without making her choose it, and then you check in from within that experience rather than before it. Now we get to the deepest part of this framework, the actual linguistic progression that takes a woman from conversation to intimacy without triggering resistance. There are 5 linguistic steps. Step 1, acknowledge the present moment. This is happening right now, not in the future, not in the hypothetical, right now. You're anchoring her in the present moment, which is where arousal lives. Arousal cannot exist in the past or the future. It only exists in now. By speaking to the present moment, you're speaking directly to her arousal. Step 2, name the emotional reality. I don't know what this is, but it's real. This gives her permission to feel without having to define the feeling. You're saying, whatever this is, it doesn't need a name yet, it just is. This removes intellectual pressure. It removes the need to understand or classify its permission to feel. Step 3, create shared ownership. We're doing this together, not I want this or do you want this. Instead, you're creating a unified framework. You're not pursuing her, you're not being pursued, you're collaborating. This is where many men fail, because they unconsciously create a dynamic where they're chasing and she's choosing. Instead, you want a dynamic where you're moving as one. Step 4, state your intention clearly. I want to touch you, not to take anything, just to feel you here. Clarity is arousing. Uncertainty is not. When you state what you want, not as a request but as an intention, you're telling her that you know what you're doing. You have direction, you have purpose, and purpose is attractive. But here is the key. You're also stating why. Not because you want to use her, but because there's something about her presence that draws you. Step 5, ask for presence, not permission. Look at me, not can I look at you. Or is it okay if I want to touch you now? Instead, specific requests for presence. Look at me. Feel this. Stay with me. These are invitations into shared presence, not requests for permission. And women respond powerfully to invitations to be present because presence is where intimacy lives. Here's the neurological reality that most dating advice misses. When a woman is in an activated arousal state, her prefrontal cortex, the part of her brain responsible for conscious decision mode, moral judgment, and social concern, is temporarily quieted. This is not her losing control. This is her nervous system moving into a state of genuine aliveness. But this quieting of the prefrontal cortex also means that conscious requests for permission feel jarring. They break the spell. They call her conscious mind back online. They reintroduce shame, social concern, and the weight of conscious choice. So when you bypass the explicit request for permission and instead move from presence to progression, you're not tricking her, you're honoring her actual neurological state. You're moving with her body instead of constantly checking in with her mind. This is why experienced lovers don't ask 1,000 questions, not because they're disrespecting consent, but because they understand that consciousness and arousal are inversely related. The more you pull her into her thinking mind, the more you deactivate her arousal. The framework we've outlined moves her deeper into her aroused state, not out of it. Here's where most men fail after they've successfully escalated. They lose confidence, they second-guess themselves, they apologize, they suddenly become uncertain again. The moment you've established a sexual frame, once you're touching, once you're kissing, once there's clear sexual energy, you cannot under any circumstance become unsure, because her sense of safety, her ability to continue, is directly tied to your certainty. This is not about aggression, it's about clarity. Frame lock means once you've established the direction, you maintain it. You don't ask, is this okay? 17 times, you assume it's okay. And you're watching for her to change the frame if she needs to, and she will. If she pulls away, she'll pull away. If she wants something different, her body will tell you. Women are actually quite good communicators. When men are listening, most of the time she doesn't say stop when she wants to stop. She'll tense. She'll create distance. She'll slow her breathing. These are the real signals. But as long as she's matching your energy, as long as she's moving towards you, touching you, maintaining proximity, you stay locked in the frame. Frame lock is also about breathing. If you're breathing fast and erratic, she'll match your anxiety. If you're breathing slowly and deliberately, she'll match your calm. Your nervous system regulates hers. This is somatic mirroring and is one of the most powerful tools for maintaining a healthy sexual momentum. Let me show you how this all fits together in an actual moment. You've been talking hours of conversation. Chemistry is thick. You're sitting close. There's been light touches. Eye contact is held longer than necessary. You notice her pupils are dilated. She's breathing deeper. She's arranged her body toward yours. Diagnostic phase complete. She's ready. You pause the conversation. You're quiet. You let the silence be thick. You're no longer performing. You're just present. You say, I've been thinking about this all night. We frame complete. You stated your desire without making it a question. She doesn't protest. She leans slightly toward you. Her breathing changes. You move closer. You reach for her face. Your hand is on her cheek. She doesn't pull away. You ask, can you feel this? Permission paradox. The touch is already happening. You're asking for presence, not permission. She nods slightly. Her eyes are on yours. You say, this is happening right now, you and me. Escalation, step 1, present moment. She doesn't move away. She's still. She's waiting. She's present. You say, I don't know what this is yet, but it's real. Escalation, step 2, emotional naming. Your hand moves to her neck. She exhales. She reaches for you. We're doing this together, you say. Escalation, step 3, shared ownership. And now you're kissing. And it was never a question. It was a progression. It was inevitable because you built it that way. You didn't ask her to want you. You created a frame where wanting you was not a choice. It was a response to something that was already happening. This is not darkness. This is architecture. This is understanding female psychology deeply enough to navigate intimacy with genuine respect for how her nervous system actually works. Let me be clear about something because this matters. What we've discussed is not manipulation. Manipulation would be using these techniques to override a woman's actual wishes, to push her past her real boundaries, to take advantage of her neurology against her authentic desire. What we've discussed is honesty at the level of biology. Most women want to be desired. They want to feel wanted. They want sex to feel like an organic progression, not a negotiation. They want to feel swept up, not chosen like a product from a shelf. This isn't a flaw in female psychology. It's how female desire actually works when there's safety and trust. The framework we've outlined gives her exactly that. It removes the burden of choice while keeping her genuinely in control. It speaks to her actual needs instead of a theoretical version of what she should need. Most men don't understand this. They either become too passive, asking permission for everything, creating a dynamic where she has to be the strong one, or too aggressive, pushing past her actual boundaries, creating trauma. The third way, the way that actually works, is presupposed confidence. It's clear, it's honest, it's attuned to her actual state, and it's infinitely more respectful than either extreme. Here's what most dating coaches will never tell you. The reason most men struggle with intimacy escalation is not because women are complicated. It's because men have been taught to apologize for their sexuality. You're supposed to want this. You're supposed to want her. There's nothing wrong with that. But somewhere along the way, you've been told that your wanting is dangerous, that your desire is something to suppress or negotiate or ask permission for. And women, they can feel that apology in your energy. They can sense when you don't believe you deserve to be with them. And they lose attraction instantly because attraction requires a man who is sure of himself, not arrogant, not aggressive, just sure. The deepest psychology here isn't about techniques or questions. It's about you believing that you belong here, that your desire is valid, that the woman in front of you is lucky to have your attention. Because here's the neurological truth. When you believe that, she feels it. And when she feels your certainty, she can finally drop her defenses. She can finally admit what she's wanted all along. That's not darkness. That's freedom. The questions we've outlined, the frameworks we've discussed, they all come from one place: genuine confidence in your own desirability and honest presence with another human being. Most men never access that place. They stay in apology, they stay in negotiation, they stay in weakness. But you, if you've listened to this, if you've understood not just the mechanics, but the philosophy underneath, you know something different now. You know that intimacy isn't given, it's created. And now you know how to create it. Breathe slowly, feel your presence, understand that the next woman you're with, she's hoping you'll know how to lead this moment. She's hoping you'll understand her so deeply that you can navigate intimacy without forcing her to choose. She's hoping you'll be certain enough to hold space for her uncertainty. That's not manipulation.